Welcome back to Stat 7 Sports. I'm the contained Kunas, and we finally got the NFL schedule coming in last night as scheduled, and we will have NFL football as of now set to start on September 10th between the Texans at the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Now going on to just kind of the whole reaction on the NFL schedule with how every team is projected off of it, starting off the AFC East. We get this really being expected to be a two-team race between Buffalo and New England. New England being its first year with Belichick, but not Brady, as Brady took his works down to Tampa Bay to compete in the NFC South. And at this point, the games that we really have to look forward to where the one that's going to be the big interest games, you're not going to get, you unfortunately aren't going to get Belichick against Brady this season. So you're not going to get that matchup you might not even get that matchup if Brady only plays one more season. But if you get it, it'll wait till at least 2021. But for the ones that will end up deciding this division, it's probably not going to be, the Patriots aren't going to be the heavy favorites to win it. Whenever a lot of projectors are putting this to be like a 9 or 10 win winning division, as you have Miami's over and under being 6, Buffalo and New England's over and under both being at 9, and the Jets being at 6.5. Once I ended up seeing that, I was a little surprised that the Jets had that low of an over under. I think they could end up being a sleeper that could sneak in for a potential playoff spot and get to see. And with Belichick without Brady, you have to see how that's going to work with Jarrett Stidham. A lot of people think of Belichick as the highest rated coach. Well, everyone thinks Belichick's the highest rated coach in the league, if not in NFL history. So, and if you go like wins above replacements, he himself is considered to be at least 2 or 3 wins better than the average coach. So moving on to the NFC North, where it should be more competitive with teams that are expected to be the higher win totals. Between the Ravens are expected to be fighting for that number 1 seed, as we're only going to have one team in each division for the first time get a bye, but you are going to get 7 teams in the AFC and the NFC. So in the East, everyone's going to expect it to be Bills, Patriots as the top 2 teams. For the NFC North, it's expected to be Ravens, Steelers, and then this is kind of the make it or break it season for the Browns with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. But the games that you have to watch out for is, of course, the divisional matchups between the Ravens and the Steelers, and then you'll get to see how good Cleveland is early on, because they get to go against Baltimore week 1, Dallas week 4, and at Pittsburgh week 6. So those 3 games are just going to basically see how they are going to be able to compete with that division. So yeah. So AFC East, they went up their cross division teams they went up against is the AFC West and the NFC West. So in the case for the NFC North, for the AFC North, they're going to be going against the AFC South, which is considered overall potentially the weakest division in the AFC, because no one's really given the AFC South that much love. They think the AFC North and the AFC West are the 2 stacked divisions. But the AFC North's 2 opponents is the NFC East and the AFC South. So all teams will be playing each of those teams one time, with Baltimore having to play New England. Baltimore having to play New England and having to play, what's the other one? Just getting brief glances. Kansas City. So yeah, 2 divisional winners. And then Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati should still be in the rear, but at this point, Cincinnati would be a year or two away from being really competitive in this division. And with the Steelers coming back with Ben Roethlisberger this season, he's going to be one that's going to put them closer to where the Ravens are. Baltimore's should not be able to get that 13-3 record that they had last season to get the top seed, but they're going to come down to earth just a little bit. But they're still going to be, them and Kansas City are expected to be the cream of the crop in the AFC. We have the Steelers and Browns potentially fighting for playoff berths as wild cards, being right around 500, just a little bit above it. As Baltimore's probably going to win the division. Steelers will probably make a wild card, but the Steelers and the Browns are 2 teams that could end up being sleepers to potentially go further. Although I am definitely skeptical of all the hype the Browns have gotten of late, which happened last year as well. Then we go to the AFC South, and this year's punching bag for everyone is probably going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have the lowest win projection of anybody in the league, and they have the highest percentage right now to get the number 1 overall pick, and more than likely go and get Trevor Lawrence. Now the AFC South, they go up against the NFC North and the AFC East. Oh, no, my bad. NFC North and the NFC North and AFC North. Sheesh. But yeah, over and under for Jacksonville is 4.5. That's the worst projection out of anybody in the league. Then we have the Texans. They got rid of DeAndre Hopkins, so I can see why their hype's a bit down. But 7.5. This is going to be a very competitive division, so it is going to be a 3-team race for it. But you have the team that went furthest in the playoffs with Tennessee, only at 8.5. Yes, this is Tannehill's first full season with them after getting a full contract and after getting in 3/4 of the season last year and all the way through the playoffs. Marcus Mariota is now out for Tennessee. He's now going to be a backup for the Raiders. So we're going to see how they end up going. And then we have the Colts, probably the favorites to... I would say the favorites to win the division with Philip Rivers at quarterback for his 1 season. And more than likely not going to play. My guess is to retire after this, maybe 1 more season after. But they do have the Colts and the Titans both at 8.5 wins projected. So they're not giving the AFC South any love to really have a chance to get more than 9 wins. And that's fairly poor. So the new AFC least is going to be the AFC South, apparently, according to all the projectors. Then we go to the division with the Super Bowl champs, with the Kansas City Chiefs, then with the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders for the first time, Denver Broncos, and LA Chargers. So their common opponents are the NFC South and the AFC East. So it's going to be interesting how all of these end up matching up with Tom Brady with the Bucks, Matt Ryan with the Falcons, maybe not so much Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers, but also New Orleans and Drew Brees. So you're going to get some very competitive matchups, especially towards the latter part of the season. Especially that the Kansas City at New Orleans. Then you get the Broncos playing at home against New Orleans. That's going to be a sneaky matchup in Denver. And then you also have the Raiders hosting their very first game in Vegas against New Orleans. So, but the Raiders very early part of the season, you could get 4 of the first 5 teams that they play with teams that make the playoffs and are expected to make the playoffs. New Orleans, New England, Buffalo, and Kansas City before the bye week. So they could really be knocked out of the playoff race on it. So really with this one, it's still going to be Kansas City's division to lose, and they shouldn't have much competition, as the next closest is expected to get to 500, and that's with Tyrod Taylor. They don't have so much hype for Derek Carr, John Gruden, or Derek Locke. Drew Lock with Denver to be able to really push forward and actually compete for anything more, not even for a wild card. So Kansas City's probably going to get that one position, and all three others just going to be fighting to get maybe the last wild card in there. Now going on to the NFC, just like last season, this is going to be a two-team race that's going to be decided more than likely in the very end, because the Giants and the Redskins, they're going to be a couple years away. They've been dealing with a bit of a youth movement for the past couple years, and it's a second year. They have second-year quarterbacks between Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins, respectively. Now, the Eagles and Cowboys both have the same projected win total at 9, and that Week 16 matchup in Dallas, that's probably the one, just like last year, that's going to decide who's going to win that division. So early on in the schedule, the Eagles' schedule is definitely a lot harder. Rams, like outside of your Washington, Cincinnati, you got the Rams, you got at San Fran, you got at Pittsburgh, you got home against Baltimore, and then Week 8 you got Dallas. So that before the bye week, if they can stay around 500, they have a good shot of staying in this race and competing towards the end. Yes, they have that 3-game gauntlet, starting with the Monday Night Football game against Seattle, then at Green Bay, and at New Orleans. So they do have one of the harder schedules in the league. But so I'm really surprised they thought that Dallas is only going to be a 9-win team at this point. Well, 9.5. And comparing that to Dallas' schedule, early on at Rams, against Atlanta, and at Seattle, 3 games that they could potentially all lose, but it's not ones that are teams that are that overwhelming. They're kind of the middle of the pack to the upper middle. It's not expected to be the full contenders, maybe take out Seattle in that one. But after that, you could see them potentially going 7-1 through their first 8. And really be set up really well 7-2 at the bye week, and then you kind of go down the stretch with the outside of Minnesota and Baltimore and San Francisco. They could potentially start to coast early on, struggle right after the bye. I don't expect them to get like a number 1 seed, but their schedule is definitely manageable. Going on to the NFC North, we have once again a 2-team race that's very likely to be just like last year, Packers against the Vikings. The Lions are definitely in a rebuilding step, even though Matt Patricia is probably coaching for his job this season. And then the Bears, Trubisky's definitely battling for his job this year, even though they brought in Nick Foles, who very likely could have the spot opening day, if not towards midway of the season. So, unlike the Dallas and Philadelphia games, you really get away. Both of those teams have their matchups early on in the season in the first half, so you're not going to get that late season matchup that'll end up deciding the division. The tougher games towards the latter of the season for both of them. Green Bay's is easier towards the latter, and yes, they do have Tennessee Week 16. But the Vikings have Tampa Bay Week 14 and New Orleans Week 16. So really at this point, the Vikings kind of have a brutal stretch early and late, with the middle definitely being a bit on the weaker side. Like really after the bye, once they get out of Lambeau, that Detroit, Chicago, Dallas, Carolina, Tampa Bay 5-game stretch is definitely a manageable one to where they could potentially sweep that and kind of go down the stretch, just seeing where they lay out with everyone else in the AFC. Now, with Green Bay 18-3 last season, even though it was a very weak 13-3 in most people's opinions, they do come in with high expectations, thinking that after drafting Jordan Love, that there's not going to be many more years of Aaron Rodgers. So Green Bay needs to really try to get some payback against San Francisco. And early on, they do get an early bye, which could end up hurting them down the stretch. But as I was saying, their latter part of the season, you're not playing anyone too explosive to where they could end up running the table towards the end. It's definitely not one that seems too difficult. But the biggest surprise on this one is it seemed like I thought I heard that everyone felt like the Bears were kind of just tailing off more and more. But if you really go on the win totals, yeah, Vikings are only at 9. Bears, they have an 8.5. So they think this is going to be a 3-team race between just taking out the Lions. And yes, that probably will be the top 3, but I don't see the Bears staying over 500 this season. But going on to the NFC South, where everyone's looking forward to the Breeze Brady matchup that we get to see opening week 1. I guess people were kind of wondering and hoping that neither quarterback was going to get hurt early on in the season to where we couldn't see that matchup, because both of the matchups with Tampa Bay and New Orleans end by week 9. But the NFC South, their two common opponents are the AFC West and the NFC North. So they get the Minnesota, Green Bay, and Kansas City big 3 with those. Everyone else is expected to be mid-tier to lower. Now, most people see this to be another 2-team race, with Atlanta being kind of a sleeper darling, where it's like all the years you thought that Atlanta had the hype to do well and potentially go on a Super Bowl run, they kind of fell flat. Now that the expectations are lower for Atlanta, maybe they can end up making a push that would get them back to the playoffs and potentially have a 3-team division to be able to get into the postseason, especially with having 3 wild cards now. And then Carolina, with new coaching, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, is in definitely a rebuilding phase, and also having to get someone brand new at middle linebacker to lead the defense, with Luke Kuechly being retired. So yeah, a lot of people were expecting that potentially you'll have a 2 10-plus win teams in this division with New Orleans and with Tampa Bay. Both these teams probably going to be on the last legs of their quarterbacks' career cycles, because both of them are north of 41, and those two key matchups that they play will probably end up deciding the division overall. But then towards the latter half, the Bucs season definitely calms down after the bye, which is very late at week 13, as well as the Panthers at week 13. But with New Orleans, they have a miserable stretch on the latter half. They can end up they're expected to do probably fairly well early on, with their hardest game being against Green Bay. But in that last half, they have a stretch of at Tampa, home against San Francisco, home against Atlanta, at Denver in Mile High, at Atlanta, at Philly, home against Kansas City, 3 back-to-back home games with Denver, Atlanta, Philadelphia before you go to the Super Bowl champs, and then you play your outside of division rival at this point that they've basically become with Minnesota, and then ending off with Carolina. So that is all teams that you could easily see make the playoffs this season and have an aspiration to be able to at least most of these teams win a game or 2 in the postseason. Then we go end off with the NFC West, where this is probably the most competitive division in football, because all 4 of these teams have the talent to make the playoffs. They have Seattle being at 9.5, Arizona only at 6.5, just like the Jets. But I think I think the Cardinals are way better than what the Jets are, even though. So it's going to end up. This is really the first full season that you can really start to judge Kingsbury's new offense with Kyler Murray. It showed potential in year one. But in year two, you want to see a little bit more production, and you should see more production with having DeAndre Hopkins come over. Then you have San Francisco at 10.5, and the Rams, after their kind of expected an exodus of some of their top players between Brocker, between Brandon Cooks, between Todd Gurley, between Corey Littleton, and yes, Aqib Talib kind of went down the drain, and they still have Jalen Ramsey, but they lost so many people on their team that were key contributors where it's like they still think the Rams are going to be potentially a 9-7 team with a winning record. So, yeah, their schedule actually isn't that bad outside of division. They only get stuck playing. They only really have to play outside of division New England and Dallas. And at Tampa. Well, they get to play the NFC East, so that's kind of to be expected. But I still do believe that San Francisco is going to be the class of this division. People thought that they got to the top a year ahead of time, and with everything that they lost last year with free agency and with retirements with Joe Staley, they were placed in free agency and the draft, and they should be right around the same area, and they just got younger. As the Saints became the oldest team in the league, whenever they got Emmanuel Sanders, the 49ers got younger. And for a team with that boastful of a defense that they have, yes, they don't have Matt Breida anymore, but still with their running attack of Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, they should be one of the biggest contenders and maybe the biggest contender in the NFC to start this season. I would end up saying that I think Arizona's numbers should be up and the Rams' numbers should be down a bit. Seahawks may be about right. Then let's go off of looking at everyone's schedules. The tough schedule, easy schedule. Now, a lot of this ends up kind of being based on what divisions they're in, so what their common opponents end up being. The NFC East ends up taking up the vast majority of it. Even the Bills are tied for fifth with Atlanta. This is all based off of records on last season with all their opponents that they play. So the NFC East, they get NFC West, they get an AFC North. Well, NFC West and AFC West, that's it. And then New England also plays Baltimore, so they have their season stacked up against them. And then you have San Francisco, where they should be expected to have a tough schedule for the fact that they had the best record in the NFC, and they got the farthest making it into the Super Bowl for the NFC. And then Atlanta's there as well. The only thing is, if you take that on the other circumstance for the easiest schedules, yes, you have the Cowboys and you have the Redskins going in. They get to go against the NFC East and the NFC West. But the surprising thing is the one who actually has the easiest schedule overall. And you see the Steelers are second easiest. But then you have, at 438 overall, you have the Baltimore Ravens, who have the best record in the NFL, and they get the easiest schedule out of everyone. So, yes, they had a down division last year. Playing Cincinnati twice does help them, who's 2-14. They have Cleveland, who's below 500. They have the Steelers, who are at 500. So a lot of that does go in their favor. But still having the easiest schedule in the NFL, it doesn't seem that really fair off of it. But this has been set up ahead of time. They want to make it to where different teams are able to play different teams they haven't played in a few years, especially whenever especially the ones that are not in divisions. And then they swap divisions over and over. So that itself can kind of skew things in that favor. As you see, three of the easiest schedules according to last season's record is from the AFC North, and the other two from the NFC East. Now going off of all the projections for it, you still have the Patriots, the Ravens, the Titans, and the Chiefs. Well, with some tiebreakers. I'm putting tiebreakers on it for the ones that have the same projections, with the tiebreakers favoring the teams that made the playoffs last year, or at least that either made the playoffs or won their division last year. Patriots and Bills are supposed to have 9 wins. Patriots made the playoffs last year, so I'm putting them ahead. Same thing. Well, the Titans made the playoffs, Colts did not. So if you go just by all the projections, your 4 division winners, you have the Patriots, you have the Ravens, you have the Titans, you have the Chiefs. Then based off of the other 3 teams that will end up making it. So only on the win projections over under, the Bills, the Steelers, and the Colts would all make the playoffs. So that would be your 7 teams, with Indy in this case being the 7 going against the 2 seed. 2 seed would be probably, go with the Chiefs in that case, because that's tiebreaker with the Ravens and Chiefs, and Ravens had the higher seed last year. So Colts, Chiefs, then you have Steelers, Patriots, Titans against the Bills. Going on to the NFC. Going on with the NFC, it would be Eagles and Cowboys would be tied. Eagles won the division last year, so I'm giving them the tiebreaker on this. And then your top 4 seeds, Frisco would be 1, Saints would be 2, Packers would be 3, and Eagles would be 4. Don't worry, Vikings would end up being... Oh, would the Vikings actually be in it? In this case, the Vikings would actually not be in the postseason, as they would be the 8th seed, because they're only projected to get 9 wins. Cowboys, Bucks, and Seahawks will end up making the playoffs ahead of them, which honestly would be surprising. But with the Bucks becoming more of a factor this season, some team from the playoffs would have had to be shot down, and the Cowboys also didn't make it last year. So Cowboys and Bucks will end up replacing the Vikings, and everything else would kind of go square. But yeah, this is going to be the first season that's going to be a 14-team playoff if the entire season goes as planned. If everything's scheduled on time, and as of this point, that's what we expect. But thank y'all for watching. If y'all have any other opinions on this, please let me know. Leave in the comments down below. Let me know if any of your projections, how your projections are different from what others have said. I'm just going off of what's been said off of ESPN, NFL Nation, amongst those levels. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. Please, if y'all enjoyed this, please leave a like, please subscribe, share us out to other people. And with all that being said, I'm the Contained Kunas. This is Stat 7 Sports. Y'all stay safe. I'll see y'all next time.